Hello, this is Miss Pat from Samuel's Public Library. This week we're going to learn about shadows, right? What makes a shadow? Can we change a shadow? How do shadows get bigger and smaller? Okay, our story today is called Boris and the Wrong Shadow by Leigh Hodgkinson. I want you to notice his shadow. What is Boris? Boris has just woken up from his cat nap. He smiles as he remembers his dream, swimming in a gigantic bowl of creamy milk. Now that he is wide awake, Boris is feeling funny. Not funny, haha, funny strange. Boris has a feeling that things aren't quite as they should be. For some reason, Boris appears to have the wrong shadow. He has no idea why, but Boris decides not to let a silly thing like this spoil an otherwise pleasant afternoon. As it turns out, Boris's afternoon is not at all pleasant. The other cats snicker. Little Flossie Fluffball squeaks at him. And the beaky birds don't bother to look up from their splashy bath. Boris is starting to wonder if he actually is a mouse after all. He does like the odd nibble of cheese, if that means anything. No, Boris is definitely 100% cat. Just a cat with a stupid mouse shadow. Boris thinks if he had any other shadow, perhaps something with a little more wow, everything would be hunky-dory. But it isn't the least bit hunky-dory, not in the slightest. However, even gloomy cats need to stretch their legs occasionally. Perfect timing, too, as this is when Boris buys something very interesting indeed. His own shadow. Look at it, skipping past without a care in the world. What nerve! Boris decides to follow it. He slinks snoopily under there. He tippy-tappy-toes over here, being ever so shushy and quiet as what? It's Vernon. Boris asks very politely if Boris took his shadow. Vernon says, no, not exactly. Boris thinks someone is telling a tiny lie. Vernon gulps and says, while you were snoozing, your shadow got bored and fidgety and wandered off. I found the shadow and it made me feel big and important, like a superstar. I didn't want to leave you without a shadow, Boris, so I gave you mine. A kind of switchy swap. Boris would really like a switchy swap switched back. Vernon thinks right now would probably be a good time to scurry home. Uh-oh. Boris's shadow is too big to fit through the door. Vernon squishes, squeezes, and squashes, but it won't budge. This might be a slight problem, as Vernon loves his mouse house. He has only just finished decorating it. If having this enormous shadow means he can't putter around at home, then what's the point? You see, it's just not easy being a tiny pink mouse all the time. Having Boris's marvelous shadow meant everybody took Vernon seriously for a change. You couldn't possibly understand, Boris, he squeaks very quietly. Boris knows exactly how it feels, as it turns out. It's not nice to be snickered at, squeaked at, ignored. It made Boris feel terribly small and all alone. Perhaps if they both stopped worrying about silly shadows, they could concentrate on more important things, like having fun together. First things first, to get Vernon out of this pickle. Vernon pushes, the shadow stretches, and Boris pulls. Till suddenly, ping, tappily, tumble, thunkity bump. Woo! Not exactly easy peasy, but the result is spot on. Vernon is loving being footloose and fancy free again. And he has a new spring in his step. This is because being with both his own shadow and Boris means double the fun. Now Vernon feels even better than a superstar, more like a super duper star. And to be honest, lugging that big bulky shadow around was a touch tiring. Perhaps a nice cup of tea followed by a little snooze will do the trick. Now that is what Boris calls a pretty perfect plan. One slurpy sip later, Boris clambers up onto his favorite pillow. This time his shadow is sleepy too, and sticking like glue. So there will be no prowling around and getting into trouble with a certain mischievous mouse. All right, so what makes a shadow? Right? What causes the shadow to appear? How do they change sizes? And they do. And you change the shape of a shadow. Right? Look at those books. And that's what those are. Those are books. And you see the shadow? What does the shadow say? Shadow says think. But if you look at this pile of books, you don't see that, huh? Somewhere there's a light and it's casting shadows on these books, and this is what they are. And you can see how this one is kind of crooked. And that's this part right here, making the part of the K. So let's find out how we can do this. All right, so for a shadow to be formed, an object has to block light. A transparent object won't make any shadow, since light can pass right through it. So we have this frame here with like clear wrap. And then we have these cardboard cutouts. So the cardboard cutout blocks the light, but the clear part doesn't. All right, that's the transparent stuff. The light's going right through it, and you can see the light through here. But the cardboard casts a shadow, and we can see a wolf and two pigs. And I believe that's the door. Okay, and it doesn't have to go all the way up. Just has to make the shadow, right? All right, a shadow play is when shadows appear on the screen because there's a light behind it, and the people are using cardboard figures to block the light rays. If you want to change the size of a shadow, then the closer an object is to the source of the light, the bigger the shadow is, right? If it's close, it covers more of the light. So let's look at this little toy down here. It's really close. You can see the flashlight here. It's really close to the flashlight. It has a really big shadow. But when we move it away a little bit, the shadow gets a little bit smaller. And when it's all the way up against the wall, it's a teeny tiny shadow because it's far away from the light. You're not going to see a shadow, though, if you place an object next to the flashlight. Right, so if this is my flashlight, and I put something here, well, it's not in front of my flashlight. So it's not going to cast any kind of shadow. The light is going to go in a straight line. And even though it doesn't really look straight, it kind of looks like it's a V, right? It has to be somewhere in between there. Either way, it's going to be the same amount of light going that way. But notice on A, it's far away. So it's not blocking that much light. But on B, it's really, really close. On B, this cup is really close to where the light is still thin. And not as much light is getting past, so now we got a bigger shadow. Shadows can change their size and their location depending on the position of the light source. Okay, so you can move the light, right? Or during the day, what moves? What gives us the light outside? The sun, right? And the sun changes spots during the day. So our shadows change throughout a sunny day. Sun's position affects how big the shadow is. So in the morning, the shadow might be on this side. At noon, when it's right above us, it looks like we're standing on top of our shadow and we don't have a really big shadow, do we? And then in the evening or the late afternoon, it's on the other side because the sun moved. So now it went from the left side to the right side, the shadow had to turn. from one side to the other. Okay, and when the sun is down low on the horizon, when the sun is setting, that's when our shadows are really long. So even though you only might be 3 feet tall, your shadow might be 12 feet. Something else you can do with shadows. You can create different shadows on the wall using your fingers, your hand, and your arm. Right? And these are just some of the ones that they have. They're doing a bunny rabbit, just using their fingers and their hand. They're making a rooster or a hen here. Now this one is kind of using 2 hands. So they got a fist and the hand, and they made a snail. And this one is using 2 hands because you got fingers hanging down here. And this is a turkey. All right, so if you guys come in, we might be able to give you some of those, or you can just look them up. All right, so let's see how we can do this. Okay. Okay, so we had a slight glitch when I tried snapping my fingers and getting the lights off, huh? So I have here a flashlight, paper towels, and I just have something holding them up. Okay, got the flashlight. I'm putting it back here behind this. You really don't see my stage anymore, do you? Because this is kind of casting a light through it. And we're going to make some shadows. Okay? Don't know if you can see this shadow. I might have to. Don't think the shadow is going to show up. It's not showing up. It's too bright. It's reflecting off the computer. Let's see. You can't go that way. All right, we'll have to go that way though. All right, because I can't have the light go right at the computer. It reflects. I'm going to have to go the other way. You know what? We won't even use these. You can do it for other people, but not towards a computer. All right, so what I'm going to do, now all I have is a little doll. Now, do you see your shadow? Oh, too bright. Computers don't like shadows, huh? All right, now we got it. Got to go up. Kind of hard to do this with a computer, but you guys will be able to do it at home. All right, so I kind of got a shadow. Even the veil is showing up as a shadow. Other thing you guys can do is make a puppet on a stick. And now look at that size, right? You can see the shadow there. Now, if I get really close, my shadow gets bigger. And when I move far away, my shadow gets smaller. And again, lights don't like computers. It kind of reflects off the screen. So I'm going to have a really hard time with this other one, just trying to do shadow puppets. Okay? But you can see my hand. Right? And now I kind of got a bunny rabbit. Right? Depending on which way I move it. So, enjoy trying to make your own shadows. And by the way, we have some pictures up here. Those are shadows of a turtle and a dolphin. Here's one of a seahorse. That means the light is above it and somebody was taking the picture underneath it. And that's how they got shadows. Because the light, they were blocking the light from coming through, right? So Go outside, you can trace your shadows different times of the day and see how they get bigger. Right? You can try making your little animals, right? Or put on a play. And as long as you don't have a computer in front of it with a flashlight, it'll work. Everybody else will see it. So enjoy, and I'll see you guys next week.